Hi everyone. So today we will be discussing the second part of differential analysis. So in the first video, we're able to orient ourselves on what relevant costs are, what are relevant benefits, and how do we determine whether an item is relevant or irrelevant. And we also had several instances on applications of relevant costing in several circumstances. So in this session, what we will do is to discuss other examples of where relevant cost analysis could be applied. Specifically, in this video, students will learn the following. Number one is to prepare analysis showing whether a special order should be accepted. So later we'll discuss what a special order is. Second, to determine the most profitable use of a constrained resource. We'll discuss that again later. And third, whether joint product should be sold at a split of point or processed further. An example of that is, for example, milk. So when you harvest milk from a cow, you can sell the milk as is and sell it at that point or process it further so that you can sell it as a different product. So you can process milk for it to become cream or for it to become butter or for it to become pastillas and sell the eventual product. Now, should you do those, should you do that and process it further rather selling it at split of point or at its original point? So that's something that we will discuss in this slide and in this presentation. These are all applications of the concept of relevant cost. So first, we discuss accepting a special order. So here, a special order decision occurs when a customer requests a one-time order at a reduced sales price. So kaya siya special order kasi meron biglang emergency order, for example, it's a bulk order, and then the customer is requesting, since bulk order naman ito, can you give me some discount? Can you sell it to me at a certain price fee? So the decision is whether pagbibigyan mo ba? Will you agree to the customer and sell at reduced price for this one-time special order or one-time bulk order? Okay. What are the aspects that management should consider? Number one, does the company have the excess capacity available to fill the order? Kasi kung may excess capacity naman, then accepting special order would be better. You get to earn more sales, right? So, ang concern mo lang, may contribution margin pa ba ako dyan sa sales price na yan? However, if a company do not have excess capacity, then he will forgo regular sales, right? By foregoing regular sales, ibig sabihin na yun, kailangan niya mag-make way for this bulk order. And therefore, he will lose the contribution margin of lost sales or sales that were replaced. So you have to consider whether the contribution margin or the total profit impact of the sale, of the special order will be higher versus the contribution margin that you will lose. And of course, number three, how will the special order affect regular sales of the long run? So let's look at this example. So again, we're looking at smart touch learning. So this is the budget of smart touch learning at 2,400 tablets. So a special order is received with the following terms. So a customer wants to buy 250 tablets, Pacquiao, at $275 per piece versus the standard selling price of 500. So meron ka ng konting meron ka ng konting reduction in contribution margin because of the special price. Pero willing siya bumili ng maraming volume, 250. Okay? And let's assume that the company has excess capacity to fulfill this order, meaning uh, meron pa naman siyang additional production capacity to fulfill 250 targets. And therefore, accepting this order means walang ifo-forgo dun sa regular sales. Okay? Since this is a special order, only variable manufacturing costs will be incurred and there will be no variable selling and administrative cost. So ibig sabihin, Dito sa special order na to, ang gagastusin lang variable manufacturing cost. No need for variable selling and administrative. Bakit? Kasi ito na, wala nang selling cost kasi siya na yung lumapit mismo, no, to buy 250 tablets. Now the question is, based on P&L impact, should a company proceed um, with this order? Let's look at it step by step. So we need to identify what are the relevant items here. So, number one, of course, what's relevant is the additional revenue from the special order, right? Because yan ang nagbago. If it, under the status quo, you will not receive that revenue. But under the special order, you will receive the revenue. Okay. Number two, additional variable costs from production. Okay. Tinanggap ng order na yan, you will incur variable costs, specifically variable manufacturing costs only. Kasi sinabi nga na wala ka nang i-incur na variable selling cost. Okay? Then, wala nang sinabi whether there are fixed cost changes. Okay? Since there will be no changes in the amount of fixed cost before and after the order, therefore it is irrelevant in our decision making. Okay? Um, if you look at revenues, the selling price is $275 based on the terms. The variable cost, we need to get the variable cost per unit, and that is 588,000, which is, we go back to the previous slide, 588,000 is the amount of the variable manufacturing cost, and divide that by 2,400 units in the budget. So the variable manufacturing cost is $245. So therefore, what's the impact? The special sales order will increase revenue by 68,750, which is 250 tablets times 275. But in so doing, you will have to incur additional manufacturing cost of 61,050. And therefore, the net profit impact is 7,500. So from a purely financial perspective, then a company should accept the special order, right? Because the profit impact of accepting the order is 7,500 pesos. Right? Let's look at the second scenario. The second scenario is the company has no excess capacity to fulfill this order. Okay? Ibig sabihin nun, we will forego, sales, regular sales. Ibig sabihin, full capacity ka na at 2,400. If you accommodate 250 tablets at $275 each, it means that you will have to sell 2,400 minus 250. Yun na lang ang pwede mong ibenta sa regular customers at regular contribution margins. No? So anong naiba in terms of what is relevant and irrelevant? Relevant pa rin yung additional sales from the sales order. Relevant pa rin yung additional manufacturing cost from the sales order. Pero nadagdagan yung isa pang relevant item. What other item is relevant? Relevant rin yung na-lose mong contribution margin sa regular sales because you accommodated this order. Right? So you will not earn that much anymore. You won't earn 250 times the current contribution margin. But you will be earning 250 at the special orders contribution margin. Okay, so you'll have to compare the two. Let's see. No? Okay. So if you look at this, additional revenue from the sale, that is a relevant item. Additional variable from production, that is a relevant item. And then dagdag yung fourth bullet. Since the company has no excess capacity to fulfill this order, it would have to forego its regular sales to accommodate this special order. And if you lose the regular sales, what happens? You will lose revenues, but you will also save variable costs. So in effect, what will you lose? In effect, you will lose or forego the contribution margin from regular sales. Okay? So if you look at the regular sales from sales earned from the special order, it's the same, 68,750, which is 250 times 75. Second line item there in the table is variable cost incurred from the special order. If you look at the line item, it's 250 times 245, same as kanina. You will have to incur 61,050. The third item there is you have to now account, no, for the foregone contribution margin from regular sales because you have to accommodate this special order. So how do you do that? You have to compute the contribution margin of regular sales. So how do you compute for that? Let's look at the last bullet point. No? So for us to get the foregone contribution margin, you need to get the regular selling price. What's the regular selling price? That's $500. So 1.2 million divided by 2,000. Then we need to get the total variable cost, regular variable cost. Okay. Look at the regular variable cost. The total regular variable cost is 588,000, which is manufacturing cost plus 150,000, which is the sales and administrative cost divided by 24, and that's 307.5. So getting the difference of the two, we get the contribution margin per unit of 192.5, the amount that we will lose for every $250, 250 tablets that we forgot. So now, if you look at the last line item, so the foregone contribution margin from regular sales will be 250 units times 192.50, which is negative 48.125. Okay? And here we see that the net profit impact will be 40,625 negative. So the decision now is that we should not be accepting the special order because you're losing so much profit versus the profit that you gain out of the special order. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So therefore, if you are looking at the decision rule, no? So the decision rule is that we accept the special price in order if the expected increase in revenues exceeds expected increase in variable and fixed cost, no, in relation to fulfilling that order. If that's the case, then you accept the special pricing, okay, a special order. If the expected increase naman in revenues is less than expected, expected increase in variable and fixed cost, then we reject the special one. But now you have to consider the line note there upstairs. No? If fulfilling the special order will require you to forego some regular sales, then you also need to consider the foregone contribution margin in the analysis. Okay, since that will also change. You cannot sell your regular sales already because this special order will take in the capacity, right? So those are the considerations. Okay. Another example is that how do we allocate constraints to different products? Naturally, companies do not have unlimited resources. For example, the production capacity is a constraint, right? Or the amount of resources available is a constraint. So constraint is a factor that restricts the production or sale of a product. And if there are constraints, you have to decide where will you allocate that constraint? How will you use that resource that have constraints? So therefore, it's important for you to determine which product ang mas sulit na pag-allocatean ng constraint na yan. So how do you then allocate the production of products to this set of different products to these different constraints? So in such cases, of course, the company wants to produce only as much as it can sell. However, if a company can sell all the units it can produce, which product should it emphasize? Therefore, if there's a constraint in terms of volume, a constraint in terms of production capacity, for example, we want to allocate that production capacity to that product which can give us the largest contribution margin per unit of constraint. Okay? And I think that will be the key item for this example. No? The contribution margin, that's usually defined as contribution margin per unit of volume sales, right? So of course, if you're looking at it from the point of view of volume sold, The higher the contribution margin, the better, right? But if you know that you have constraints available, you have constraints in production, etc., no, then what will be more relevant to you in terms of allocating or deciding which ones to prioritize or not is per unit of constraint usage, alin ba sa mga products na yan ang may highest contribution margin per constraint? So let's look at this example. So assume that the company can sell all the standard tablets and premium tablets it produces. That's only 19,500 machine hours of manufacturing capacity. Okay, and the company uses the same machines for both types, standard and premium. So in this case, machine hours is the constraint. No? I think one caveat that's very important is there. That this is a short-term decision. So therefore, we are assuming that we are bound by the constraints. Kasi one solution is, sige, bumili tayo ng additional machines, no, so that we can extend our machine hours. But we are not, that's something that we will study for long-run management decisions. We're thinking about short-run management decisions. And we are thinking that the 19,500 is a fixed constraint. Given that we have no choice of how to expand it, and that's really the best that we can do, where do we then allocate the machine hours? Uh, sa standard tablets ba o sa premium tablets? Okay. If you look at the contribution margin per unit per se, no? So if you look at the table, contribution per margin per unit using the information in the previous slide is 192.50 for standard and 225 for premium. Okay. If you look at contribution margin per unit, or you will say, maximize natin yung premium, right? Because per product sold, if you sell more of the premium, it has more contribution margin that brings in to the company. But in this case, since you know that you have a constraint, you need to ensure na sulit per hour needed per unit, right? Okay. So what you need to do is to get a contribution per unit of the constraint, contribution margin per unit of constraint. In that case, we know that for every hour that I spend on this product, no, ang contribution yan is this much. Can you prioritize which of the two products have higher CM per constraint, per unit of constraint? Kung sino mas malaki, you prioritize. So let's look at this example. Let's look at the table here upstairs. Okay. So it says here that hours required to produce one tablet for standard is 7.5, for premium is 10 hours. Okay. Now, if you uh, get the tablets produced per hour, so that's 1 hour divided by 7.5 and 1 hour divided by 10, you can actually produce 0.133 tablets per you need 1.33 hours, no, per tablet. No, sorry, you need 0.133 tablets per hour. That's what you can produce. For the premium tablet naman, that's zero point 0.1 tablet per hour. Okay? And since we have the contribution margin there at 192.5 divided by 225, multiplying 2 and 3 so that we can get contribution margin per machine hours, we see that the standard tablets has 25.66 dollars of contribution margin per hour versus $22.5 per machine hour for premium. So based on this discussion and based on this analysis, we conclude that mas sulit gamitin yung machine hours sa tablet, sa standard tablet, right? Because it has a higher contribution margin per machine hour. So if you have a set of constraints, mas gamitin mo yung machine hours sa standard tablet and produce as much as you can. Because mas sulit siya. No? Of course, may isa pang constraint yun. Hindi naman pwedeng 100% yung standard tablet. No? Bakit hindi pwede? Meron pa rin demand side. No? The market has a demand for standard tablets. So pwede mag-produce ka ng napakadami, hindi mo naman mabenta. So therefore, this is the production side. Right? You have to ask your marketing people, ilan ba mabibenta nyo? So yun yung parang i-bridge natin. Okay? So based on production information and management accounting information, it's better that you allocate the resource to standard tablets. However, marketing has to go back to you, but I cannot sell all of that. I can only sell this much. Kung magtatag po yung dalawang information na yun, at malalaman mo, ilan na iba-budget ng standard tablets. So, standard tablets a higher contribution margin per machine hour. No? So, how much profit are we going to earn at full capacity? So, for example, if you look at the standard tablet, it's 25.66. No? If we devote all of the machine hours to the standard tablets, the contribution margin, no, that we will receive is 570. No? Versus premium tablets, if you devote all of the machine hours to premium tablets, the contribution margin that we will um, receive is 438,750. So this shows that really you can maximize um, more contribution margin by selling standard tablets. Why don't we do that? Because that has to align with the market. Right? Kung hindi natin kayang ibenta yan, iba yung this is just looking at production and finance. Insensitive tayo sa marketing in this case, in this sense, right? We're not thinking about marketing in sales, but we have to ask marketing in sales, ilan ba ang kaya niyong ibenta? Basta ako, alam ko, on the production side, that if we have a choice, we'd rather sell standard tablets because it gives us the higher contribution margin per constraint. Again, one caveat again is that this is for short-term decisions. In the long run, I can always improve um, the number of machine hours. I can invest in long-term machinery. That's a subject in your corporate finance class. Hindi na yan makakover dito. Yung long-term decision. So what's the decision rule? Which products to emphasize? The decision rule is that you emphasize the product with the highest CM per unit of cost. That's the decision rule. Lastly, the decision of whether to sell or process further the product. At what point in processing should a company sell its product? No? For example, ang sabi dyan, maraming natural resources, no? And I think the easiest example is dairy. No? When milk is pasteurized, no? A company can decide whether it will sell the pasteurized milk as is, no? Or process it further into dairy products such as reduced milk, butter, sour cream, cheese, other dairy products. Baka naman better na ibenta mo na lang as pasteurized milk. Do not incur the additional cost. No? Benta mo na ngayon. No? So, pag binenta mo na ngayon, what will you receive? You will receive the income today. Right? However, pag i-process further mo pa, ano mangyari? You will incur the costs to process, which can be variable and fixed costs. Right? So when you process it further, what do you get in return? It's supposed to be the selling prices of these units increase, and you can get more revenue out of it. So that's the relevant item. Okay. Isa pang example, na usual example, chicken. Okay? When you dress the chicken, buo yan, right? Um, and then you will have to chop the parts, into its components, right? You can decide what to do with the parts. You can sell it as is, dressed chicken as is, or you can chop the parts, and then yung iba gawin mong chicken ham, no? Yung iba gawin mong barbecue. Barbecue yung ibenta mo, what raw chicken. Okay? Gawin mong chicken nuggets. Right? So marami kang pwedeng gawin sa raw chicken. should you process it further or wag na lang, not worth it? No, essentially, that's the problem that we are confronted with. So an example here is again laptops or tablets. So suppose Market Learning can sell its tablet computers as is, or it can add front accessible extras. So sell as is or process it further by adding certain features. Okay? Second bullet point, the cost to add a port is $5 per unit. Okay? This cost includes the cost of modified casing, the USB component, the labels, variable cost, and that. Okay? This feature is very popular, and the tablets with this feature sell for $20 more than tablets without the feature. So what's relevant is the incremental revenue that you get by processing this further. Okay? So if you look at the table here sa taas, no, what's the expected revenue from selling it as is? If you sell it as is, you will get $500 times 2,400. Okay? When you when you process it further, how much are you expected to sell it? 2,400 times $520 each is $20 more than the normal tax. So the process further is 1.248 million. Okay. Now, ano pa yung relevant? The other relevant item is whether you have additional costs of processing. You have to process it by adding or spending $5 more. Okay. So 2,400 times $5 each. So you will have to spend $12,000 to process it further. So looking at the difference, no, the difference between the selling prices is 48,000, which is 20 times 24, right? Compare it against the additional cost of processing it further, which is you will have to spend $5 each. So that's $5 times 24, 12,000. So you know that the incremental revenue, you know, out of doing this process, you know, is higher versus the cost of implementing further processing. So therefore, we know that it's better. We are the company will do better. So what's the decision rule? So if the additional revenue from processing further exceeds the additional cost of processing further, then you process it further. No, kasi worth it. No, mas malaki yung additional kita mo kaysa sa additional cost. On the flip side, if the additional revenue from processing further is less than the additional cost of processing further, no, again, sell as is, not worth it, not to process further. So those are three other examples of the applications of relevant cost analysis. No, so we did all of this. We prepared analysis for special order transactions, use of a constrained resource, and um, analyzing whether joint product should be sold at split of point or processed further. Thank you. And those are the two lectures that we have on differential analysis.